Welcome everyone to your Monday Mindset, a free weekly live Zoom session available to client acquisition and scaling members, plus our agency Fast Track family. If this is your first time here today, please type first in the comments. If you want reminders every week so you don't miss this call, go ahead and type in Zoom in the comments and we will get you that. If you're watching the replay, you're watching it somewhere where there's comments, you can also type those things into the comments there as well. So today we are doing something we only do a couple of times. We don't do it very often, but maybe every couple of months we go ahead and we open up the door to say, what do you guys have? What are your burning questions? What things do you want me to talk about? And we already have, I think, 4 people who sent us in over Facebook those questions. If you're here live, go ahead and put your questions in the chat and we'll get them as well. If you're watching the replay, if you ever have questions, send them in. Sometimes we save them for a Monday Mindset like this. Other times we will answer them right away. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our first question. So I'm going to come out here to the Facebook group. That is where most of the questions reside as of right now. And let's take a look. So some of the questions I already had before people started answering. So one of the questions I had was, what position should I hire first when building my team? That is a great question. Great question. So when you're building your team, obviously there's an order of operations, right? You probably think you need a project manager. You think you need something else. But I always tell people the number one thing that you should do is think about, if I hired this person right now, whatever position that is, which thing would take the most time off my plate? So if all you have, on your plate right now is talking to customers, constantly, then maybe it's a project manager. However, if you're still creating all the websites yourself or doing all the SEO yourself, and that's taking up the majority of your time, then those are the positions I would hire. You see, there's no one set answer for this. This can be, different from everybody. But the number one goal here is hiring people, bringing on the who's, right? Bringing on those people that are going to help us. It's about freeing up our time so we can go out and do more lead gen and revenue generating tasks. So in that question, I would say 100% look within, ask yourself, what am I spending the most hours every single week doing? Could I get someone to replace me? And I don't care what you're doing. Now, this is something that happens, right? We have all our stinking thinking. I don't care what it is. You are replaceable. I told myself for years, oh, I can't hire for that. Nobody's going to be able to replace me. Guess what? Yes. We're all replaceable, no matter what. So find tasks, find things that you can get rid of off your plate. And to me, that's the number one position I would be looking to hire for, 100%. Okay, the next question I was asked was, why don't you offer AdWords as a service? Another great question. I can't be everything to everybody. And when I first started my agency, that is what I tried to do. If somebody called me and said they needed AdWords, I said yes, and I became an AdWords specialist. If somebody called me and said they wanted Facebook ads, I became a Facebook specialist. If somebody called and wanted a website, I did it. If they wanted a website that, was something I didn't do, I'd find out how to do it. The reason I don't do AdWords is simple. I stick to what I do best and what gives me the highest profit margin I can eke out. And AdWords fell by the wayside. We used to do AdWords for clients, and I get it. Most people say it's a very passive type of income, right? Very passive in the sense that, you get their AdWords campaign set up and then you do nothing. But that's not the way to do it. If you want the ads to actually work, if you want the customer to see why they're paying you each and every month, you have to be looking at things and changing things and tweaking things. To me, there just wasn't enough ROI in order for me to make it make sense. Why would I have my customer give Google $4,000 a month and I got to keep, a measly $800 of that maybe? No, thank you. I'd rather take that $4,000 for my customer and do SEO, which in the long run is going to get them more bang for their buck. So that's why we don't offer AdWords. It's twofold. One, because we are experts in SEO, web development, logo design and print marketing, and funnels. Those are the things we sell. Those are the things we do. So we try to stay in that wheelhouse. And then number two, because in AdWords, your client's giving a huge chunk of money to Google, and it leaves very little to give any to you. Okay, the next question. What is considered a good profit margin? Hey, one that's higher than 50%. That's going to be your standard answer. You want to make a minimum of a 50% profit margin. For those of you who might not know what a profit margin is, after you deduct all of your expenses, including your labor costs, your, overhead, so to speak, what is the profit you get back? It's very hard to actually consider a profit margin if you're not keeping track of every little detail. So for instance, if you hire a VA that works on websites and that VA also works on something else, you're going to have a hard time unless you keep track of the hours figuring out your ROI and, your profit margin. So I think calculating that is probably the most difficult part of it, not actually attaining it. A high profit margin is probably in the 75 percentile, maybe 85. You're rarely going to see a profit margin higher than that. So I would say a good profit margin is right around 65 to 75%. That's the sweet spot we're all trying to attain. What does that mean? For every $100 I bring in, I get to keep 65 or 75 of those dollars. And the rest is going to go to, whoever's doing the work, all of my overhead, my bills, that kind of thing. Now, remember, that's where you make your money. Your money can either be included in the numbers. So if you're taking a salary from your company, then yes, that would be included in the overhead costs. And the company is the house, they get the remainder. On different things when I first started my business. So for example, when I first figured out what the ROI was for my website design, it was 13%. Why? Because I was doing the work and I counted myself into the numbers. And by counting myself into the numbers, because I was doing the work, I had a 13% profit margin. That was one of the first indicators to me that I needed to hire somebody or more than one somebody to get out of the business of doing the work. As I got my web design process dialed in, as I nailed it, knew exactly what I did, as I hired people to fill those spots, my profit margin went up and up and up. Why? Because people were doing the work that didn't cost what I cost if I averaged my hourly wage in there. And so we now sit at about a 65 to 75% profit margin on almost every website we build. On SEO, the first year, you're probably only going to eke out about a 50% profit margin. Why? Because you want to spend money to get them ranked. You want to spend money to prove to your customer that this was a good spend and they should keep spending it. By year 2, you should be able to knock that up to 60% because it's getting a little easier. And by year 3, that's why we want to have long-term clients, you should be able to get your profit margin on SEO up to about 70%. Now, mind you, the customer's still getting the same amazing results from you. They're still doing great things. The SEO campaign should be hitting on all cylinders, but because you're refining your processes, you're getting more streamlined, and you're doing better, you're going to see your profit margins increase. It was a great question to ask because here's the thing. Profit margin is what keeps you in business. There's a reason why big companies can have huge discounted sales. They could offer stuff at 80 and 90% when it doesn't sell in the store because odds are they marked it up 10 times what they paid for it. So when they're asking $30 for something, or let's say $100 for something, and they don't sell it, if they only paid 10 bucks for it, when they put it on sale for 10 bucks, you think it's a value, they broke even, that's okay. It's not optimal, but they can still do it. So same with your business. You have to have those profit margins. So 50% or greater, 65 to 75%, in my humble opinion, is probably the ideal profit margin you're looking for in your company. Great questions. Okay, that covered all the questions I had ahead of time. Now I'm going to jump down, and in the comments, we actually got a couple of questions. And then again, for those of you here live, if you have questions, any question, you can ask me anything. Go ahead and put them in the comments in the chat section of Zoom. Okay, Colin asked, what is the first thing you think of when the word conversions is thrown out there? So Colin, the first thing I would say is, man, conversion, the word conversion is the buzzword right now, and you hear it everywhere. And just before I answer the question, well, I guess I am answering the question. The first thing that comes to mind for me is to understand what a conversion is. It doesn't necessarily have to be dollars, but it is something measurable, meaning I could build a website and nobody comes to it. I could build a website and a ton of people come to it, but nobody interacts with it. Or I could build a website that has high conversions, meaning they come to the website and they actually do something. They fill out a form, they call the phone number, they interact, whatever it is the goal is. So for me, the first thing I think of with the word conversions is the fact that most people aren't thinking about it when they build websites, when they create, those type of things. So I would highly recommend that you use the word when you're talking to your customers. And Lee Witcher asked another question that's kind of related. So I'm going to put that out there, and then we'll get back to conversions. How do you balance SEO versus CRO when building a page for a client? That's a great question, Lee. And again, it comes down to conversion. So CRO has everything to do with our conversion result optimization, right? So making sure that we can SEO a website, make sure it gets found, but we also have to make sure when it gets found, people interact with it, right? We need to optimize the conversion rate. And so these things go hand in hand, and that's why I'm asking them both together. When you think about a website and you go there, above the fold, we're looking to have things like forms or pop-up boxes or things the customer can interact with, maybe their chat widgets, etc. We're trying to figure out exactly what our customer wants to have happen. Because the minute we have identified the problem, we can start working on the solution. So as you're consulting with your customers and you ask them, hey, so, you say you want a new website. Can I ask you why you want a new website? It might be surprising to hear the customer says, not that it's not pretty, not that they don't like how it looks, but nobody, we get no business from it. Your job is to go in and look at that website with not just design eyes, but also conversion eyes. And conversion eyes means if I'm on this website and I've never been here before, what's going to make me interact with this customer, either buy their product, inquire about their service, fill out a form, or do something? And so that's what we have to think about. And it's a buzzword. Man, we're hearing it everywhere right now. Conversion, conversion, conversion. And everyone thinks it has to be some complicated funnel. It doesn't. Now, sure, those help. And sometimes you want those. But think of it this way. If I go to a website and I don't do anything, what was the purpose of going to that website? Nothing. If a customer starts hearing you use the words conversion, if they start hearing you use words like, okay, so we're going to build a website and I want to make sure it's aesthetically pleasing. What we want to do is above the fold, I'd like to put in a form, an interactive form for your customers so we can get, better conversions. Just throwing the word out there is going to make you sound smarter to your customer, but it's true. We want to make sure that the customer not only has a website that's pretty, but also converts. Because remember, once the website converts, then let's say you haven't sold them an SEO package. It's a lot easier to sell them on, hey, your website really converts now. Let's get it more traffic to it. Let's talk about ways we can get more traffic to your website, which means more money in the bank for your customer. So back to the original question, what is the first thing you think of when the word conversions is thrown out there? The first thing I think of is we all should be working and talking and doing things around conversions. When we build a website that has a greater chance of converting, that has a greater chance of getting interactivity or whatever the customer desires, right? In some cases, it's buying a product. When we're SEOing, same idea. I have seen people throw AdWords out there and spend a ton of budget for their customer and then point it back to the homepage when people click on the ad. So you put a bunch of money into AdWords, you got a customer to click, so it's converting, and then you push them to a homepage that's not specifically designed to take whatever they're clicking on and convert that into a real customer. And that's a mistake. Same thing with SEOing a website. You SEO the website, it comes up number one, and where does it go? The homepage, because you didn't think about conversions. Most of the pages that we have for our customers in our SEO strategy, we call them money pages, and those money pages are never the homepage. That's not what we want showing up in search engines. If I'm selling widgets, I want the widget page to show up number one. That's the conversion page. That's the page that's going to get people to actually take action. So super important. Now, Lee also asked, and we'll expand on this just a touch more, how do you balance SEO versus CRO when building a page for a client? So it depends, Lee. If the customer has paid me enough budget with the idea that I'm doing both of these things, the balance is simple. I got to get people to come to the page, but when they come there, I have to have them convert. Because if they don't convert and people are paying me $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month, they're going to stop paying me because you know what? It's not working. It doesn't matter if they're number one. It doesn't matter where they show up in the SERPs, right? If it doesn't convert, it's not going to work. So the balance has to be there. I would say it depends on budget. If somebody gives you $1,000 a month, odds are I'm focusing solely on SEO, get the traffic. Then I'm going to go back to the well and say, hey, so we got the traffic. I kind of mentioned this in the beginning. We don't have enough budget to, really do SEO and CRO at the same time. And by the way, call it conversion marketing to your customer because they don't get all these fancy terms. And, I always call it Google ranking to my customer, not SEO, because they don't get the fancy terms. But I can go back to the well after the fact, Lee, and I can say, hey, we now got some decent traffic coming in. We really need to work on some conversions. So, maybe it's, I need to build an extra landing page. I need to build out a funnel for you. I need to build out an email sequence for you. Whatever it is, I'm going back to the well with my hand out saying, you got to keep paying me the $1,000, but now I need another $1,000 a month to work on this other stuff. If they're giving me a ton of money, if they're giving me $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, there should be enough budget in there to keep at least probably 30% of it on CRO activities, so on conversion type of stuff. So that would be my balance, probably 70-30 when you're trying to rank them. Now, once they get ranked, once they start ranking in the SERPs very well, you want to shift that balance, and it's probably the opposite. Then you're going to spend 70% of the budget on conversion activities and maybe 30% on SEO. So I think it depends where you are in the campaign on how you balance that. But number one, you have to educate the customer. The customer has to know, hey, these are different activities, right? Getting you found in the search engines is different than making sure your website or wherever they're going converts. If I don't have enough budget, I can't do both. So which is more important to you right now? You might be surprised that the customer comes back and says, listen, I would love my website to rank, but I get a lot of traffic from XYZ today, and I can't, see that our website's, converting. You've opened the door and you say, okay, well, let's do this then. Let's take your $1,000, $2,000, whatever that, you've talked about budget. Let's take that money and why don't we do this for the first 3 months? Let me work really hard on, fixing some of the things wrong with your website, start getting the pieces in place to get those conversions. And then as we see that happen, we can start shifting that budget or adding more budget over to SEO. How does that sound to you? Get your customers involved. That's the number one thing I would say here. Your customers need to understand. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be fancy. But if they don't understand, they're not going to buy in. They're not going to say yes. So something to keep in mind. All right, next question. Let's see. Holly asks, do you utilize a business Facebook page to get business? Not ads, but through Messenger and people reaching out to you. So yeah, Holly, for all of my companies, no matter what it is. So my agency, for example, we actually have 5 GMB locations around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So 5 physical locations around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. All 5 of those locations have their own Facebook page. However, our main Facebook page for our main location is the one we invest a lot of time in. And do we really use it for getting business right now? Not a ton, not because it's not a good strategy, just because I like other lead gen methods better. I find them easier and more succinct. However, just by having that Facebook page, people actually reach out to us on Facebook. Not a ton. It's not like we're getting 2 or 3 or 4, leads a month, but on a regular basis, maybe 1 every month or 2, someone will reach out to us, find us organically somehow, and reach out to us on Facebook. So for me, it's a decent method. The problem with chat, the problem with text is that's where scammers will come in. If you get them on Facebook, for example, and they're chatting with you, convert that to a phone call, meaning at some point say, hey, I would love to keep chatting on Messenger, but it just takes too long. Would you mind jumping on a phone call and let's talk about your project? If you get back anything fishy, like, oh, yeah, I'm hearing impaired, I can't talk on the phone. Listen, they're not going to get on the phone with you. So to me, that Facebook opens the door. And if you guys haven't seen this as of late, people are using Facebook reviews, the comments in the review area, they're using for spam right now. What a pain in the butt. So no, I don't really utilize a business Facebook page to get business, for my agency. Now, flip that. For Agency Fast Track, 100%. I'm using my Facebook page. I'm using a Facebook group. I'm running Facebook ads, all of the above. But that's a little bit different. For your agency, I would focus number 1 on SEO. SEO is probably the biggest driver for us of traffic outside of our lead gen methods when we employ them. If that didn't answer your question, go ahead and add a follow-up question in the chat area. Okay, let me come out here. All right, and I've seen a couple people said Zoom, got it. We will make sure we get you the Zoom invite so you can get on a Zoom and get those reminders and that kind of thing. Okay, somebody sent me a private question. How much should I pay overseas workers? Pretty open question. So, couple things. Overseas workers depend on a couple things. Number 1, what country they're in. Number 2, the task you want them to do. So the easy answer is don't pay the least. Don't pay the least. You don't want inexpensive workers because you think it's saving you money, because in fact, it saves you absolutely zero money. Zero money. And what I mean by that is if you're not paying folks their worth, then you're not going to get good quality people. and what you're looking for, in payment terms. And it's a great question. When you think about what you want to pay someone, what's their expertise, right? You wouldn't pay a beginner web developer the same thing as you would pay a PHP programmer. On average, you can find out those salaries online. You can go type that in, average salary of web developer in India, average salary of VA in the Philippines. And you're going to find information online that tell you what you should, in fact, pay for those workers. Now, there's a couple of questions today I've received that we go into much greater detail when you're in our program. So if you're not a part of our program, please reach out and let's have a conversation about it. Absolutely no pressure sales whatsoever. If you reach out to me on Facebook, private messenger, Skype me, whatever, I'll set up a 30-minute conversation. We can get together one-on-one and we can talk about our programs to make sure it's a good fit. But we do get into the particulars in those programs. So on average, I would say overseas, you probably want to pay between $6 to $10 an hour, because that's where you're going to get, a higher quality earner than say a $3 or $4 an hour worker. If they're with you for a long period of time, you want to continue to increase their money, things like that. So good question, but it's got so many variables, it's hard to really get into that today. Okay, let me go back out. I don't see any more questions in the chat. So for those of you guys here live, if you have any burning questions you want to ask, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'm going to go back out to Facebook here and see if anybody else asked a question out there. And I'm not seeing any more in Facebook, and I'm not seeing any more in chat. Wow, that surprises me. Last time we did Q&A, we had so many questions. I think we were here an hour answering questions. So I'm going to call last call. If you have no questions, I'm going to give you a little inspiration and send you on your way for the day. Just check in. Okay, I don't see any more. So none on Facebook. I don't see any more in the chat. All right, perfect. Okay, so those are the questions we got. I went ahead and answered those. Here's the thing. I always tell folks, when you have a question, remember, I don't know everything. You don't know everything. But one of us in this community probably knows someone who has the answer. So even if I don't have the answer to your questions, I probably know somebody who does. And that's the cool thing about this community. So don't be afraid to, in our community, in the client acquisition and scaling Facebook group, don't be afraid to just post a question to the group and get other people's takes. My take's great, but we have some amazingly smart people in our group as well who can add to the conversation. So ask questions in there. There was one, just to kind of put this out here, and let me find it. There was one just yesterday. Tammy asked, what are your thoughts on working with two clients of the same business model in the same city? And 7 people have commented on that and given their opinions, including myself, right? So most of the consensus was, hey, don't do that. If you got a dentist in, your city, you shouldn't take on another dentist in your city to do SEO. And I kind of agree. You want to be exclusive, but there are times when, in fact, you would do that. And I put that in the comments out there on that post. So don't be afraid to post. The only thing you're not allowed to do in the group is actually drop links and things like that. But you're more than welcome to post questions, get information from each other, have me weigh in, everybody else weigh in. It's a great way to get your questions answered. Fantastic. Okay, still not seeing any more questions. I'm going to go ahead and close this down. So remember, at the end of the day, we come here every week. Some of you guys, I see you here every week. It pumps us up, gets us ready for our week. Guess what? It does the same thing for me. It gets me going, gets me fired up, and I start out on Monday on a good foot. So don't forget to come every week, get information from us. Sometimes we drop some really great information. Other times we're just here getting Q&A. And some of my favorite times are when we're doing hot seats with members. If you have something great that's happened or something you want to share in a hot seat format, just let me know and we'll get you scheduled for a hot seat. As a reminder, we are not going to be doing another Agency Fast Track X Success course until January 4th. And on January 4th, when we launch that course, we have a special edition we're adding to this round of the course that we're going to add on. If you're already an Agency Fast Track member, you are going to get involved in this special edition absolutely free. If you're not an Agency Fast Track member, I encourage you to go look at our programs or schedule a strategy call with myself, not my team, with me. On that strategy call, we'll kind of talk about where your business is. We'll see where you want to go. And then I'll see if one of our programs is a good fit. And if so, I'll tell you about it. If not, you've got a great session with me. If you're interested in that, type the word strategy in the comments, whether you're watching the replay or here live, or if you're on YouTube. We are posting these on YouTube, but it usually takes a few weeks before we get them up there. So they're a little out of date by the time you guys see them, but that's okay. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome. Thank you for being part of our YouTube community. Excellent. Everyone, have a fantastic week. Make sure your week is productive. Make sure you go out there and do the things that are going to impact your business immediately. And do those things with a smile, knowing that those of us who keep working on our businesses, we change our mindset, we're going to change the world. Guys, have a prosperous, safe, and productive week. And I will see you next week.